Sharp Talk time, people. This is where I bring people who've made magnificent transformations in their life, fitness, body, mindset, so much things. And I bring them to the stage where they can explain on what you need to hear to transform your life too. And at the stage, I've got Marisha. She's a long-term, special person because she's done amazing things she has. And I'm bringing her to the stage today. So Marisha, welcome to Sharp Talk.
Hello, you're right. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
it's an honour.
Yeah, it is an honour to have you here.
Oh.
And you know, and I know that your journey has been like one of extraordinary.
It's definitely been a lot of seasons in my journey, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I think, you've got a lot of knowledge bombs that you can share with people about misconceptions and and knowing themselves, body and mind as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah.
I'll just tell you how it all went down.
Just so if you can just tell the people a little bit about yourself.
So I am a businesswoman and journalist. And yeah, I'm someone for whom fitness was a thing or sport was a thing that I did when I was a kid. So I was quite active as a child, and, played in all of the school team sports and all that kind of stuff, did netball, athletics, all that sort of jazz. But then as I got into adulthood, kind of left all of that behind, really. I didn't think too much of it. Just
is that because you were so busy?
Yeah, just jumped into sort of career, and you start navigating life and start trying to you're going through stuff. So nobody was thinking about the gym or anything like that in particular. And also when I was younger, I was actually quite big, particularly as a teenager. Ironically though, I was also very fit. So I remember doing a fitness test when I was about 17 with all the girls on the netball team. We did this fitness test with our gym teacher, and I think I came out literally the fittest of everyone. Yet still, visually, I didn't look that way. For me, fitness and weight was kind of the thing that was akin with each other, if that makes sense. And I remember being surprised by it, but then was a bit like, yeah, well, I still felt fat. I still felt a bit chubby. So I never thought too much of it. And then when I left school and got 19, I think is when all my body changes happened. So I lost a lot of weight. It's like all the baby fat, puppy fat left me. And when that happened, I just never thought about fitness again. It was like, well, I don't need to worry about it. I can wear whatever I want.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So in saying that then, the biggest question is, what problem were you having?
So
before you came to see me, what was the problem that you were having?
Well, the thing was, the problem, I suppose there was an actual critical moment, because the critical moment was that I'd probably known you about maybe 3 or 4 years. And I remember one of the guys in your class used to see me milling around every so often. Probably like waiting to have meetings with you or whatever to talk business, which is how we met initially. Yeah. And the long and short is he would always say to me, why don't you get involved? Why don't you get involved? And I always used to say the same thing to him. I used to be like, listen, horses sweat, gentlemen perspire, ladies glow, and I'm doing none of it. And I used to watch those classes and see like what people were going through, and I'd be like, I'm not doing that. Anyway, what happened was I broke my foot. So I had an accident at home, broke my foot, and did my version of fast tracking. I'm going to heal really quickly and I'm going to be fine. So 4 weeks later, I took my cast off and I was just ready to rock and roll again. And over the course of like a couple of months after that, I really started to get a lot of hip pain. And I think one day I mentioned it. Well, actually, to be fair, when I broke my foot, you said to me at that time, you were like, you may never be the same again. And if you find you're having problems after your healing, let me know. And I was kind of like, okay, I never thought too much of. Anyway, a couple of months, I think it was probably after I was healed, allegedly healed, I was having a lot of hip pain in my opposite hip to the foot that I broke. And I remember saying that to you one day and saying, do you know what? Like, I'm having a lot of discomfort and a lot of hip pain. And you were like, respectfully, can I ask you to pull your skirt above your knees? Because I need to see something. I remember you being very clear about that. You're like, it's respectfully, this is strictly professional. And I was kind of like, okay. And when I stood and you were like, stand straight and so on and so on. And when I did that, you said, you're misaligned and the hip pain is coming from the fact that you're not aligned properly. You need to increase your strength. We need to improve your strength. And I was kind of like, yeah, okay. And you were like, listen, why don't you do a few sessions with me? Because I hadn't done any sort of physiotherapy or anything like that. I was told by the hospital I didn't need it. So you were kind of like, why don't you do a few sessions with me? And I don't know, is it like 9 years later? Here we are, still doing sessions. But that was kind of where it started. And what I would say is that I didn't know what my problem was. So I hear what you're saying when you're like, what's the problem? But for me, it was a practical thing. I didn't really deem that I had any problems. And then I would argue that over the course of this journey, I found out about lots of problems that working out has helped me to cure.
All right. If I was to say then, like you said, at the time you wasn't aware of your problem. If I was to rephrase it and say, what was your frustrations you were having?
Like I say, do you know what? And it wasn't stuff that I thought could be cured in the gym. So my thing was pain. And at the time, I was being quite specific about the hip pain because that was connected to my foot break. But, outside of that, I had a lot of aches and pains. I remember like when the weather would change, I'd have like a really sort of dodgy shoulder. I'd struggle with it. It'd be quite difficult. I had a dodgy knee. So it used to be like my right shoulder, my left knee. I just had aches and pains, and I just kind of thought that was normal because, I was over 30 as well at that point. You just think it's happening. Plus, my mom has rheumatoid arthritis. So periodically, the hospital or the doctors would test me to see if it was arthritis related, where all of these aches and pains were coming from. And they would always come back and say, no, there's not enough of a marker to suggest that you have it. But I think there was a part of me that was kind of like, well, it's probably going to happen one day because, it's hereditary and so on and so forth.
So you were moving to self-acceptance?
Well, yeah, it's like I had no reason to think otherwise. Do you know what I mean? And like I say, I would show what seemed like early signs. So I think initially that was the thing, but I didn't think anything about like the gym curing that. I was just like, okay, that's just a thing. I think for me, because I wasn't concerned about my weight. As I say, for me, the gym was associated with that. It was like when I have a weight problem is when I need to go to the gym, and I don't have a weight problem at the time. To be fair, my weight was too low, probably not too high. I remember you telling me years later I was mager. I never knew that at the time. He was like, yeah, you needed to put some muscle on. I was like, did I? I didn't know. But that's what I associated it with. I think what happened was when I started training with you, and, I remember it being really hard at first and not really enjoying it. And I remember the first time you telling me to run on the treadmill for 10 minutes, I was not impressed. Yeah. And then he upped it to 12 minutes and then he upped it to 15. And I was like, why am I doing this? But obviously we started like weight training, and I remember doing like leg press and stuff. I remember 40 kg mashing me up till I couldn't even walk down the stairs. And my mom looking at me going, no, this is not right. What is he doing to you? This is not right. And I was like, Mom, I've just got to go through the process. I need to build muscle. I've got to get stronger. But I remember going through that process. And what happened was about 6 months later, what I noticed was normally when the seasons changed and I'd be coming into that space of the aches and the pains all kicking in again because it's getting cold and that didn't happen. And I was kind of like, hang on a second, the pain I'm used to having, the pain I'm used to living with isn't really there anymore. And that's probably the first time when I was like, oh, okay, so this fitness thing is not really just about weight. This is about other things. And I remember kind of starting to preach to my mom at that point, like, you got to strengthen your joints and you got to do this, because that's what I realised was happening. But that was probably the point when I was kind of like, okay, there's something in this.
Okay, so that was like, how long was that, would you say that was when you realised that what you were coming for was actually working for you?
I'd say about 4 to 6 months, because prior to that point, you see, I'm the sort of person where, to an extent, I trust the process. And the reality is that the hip pain went quite quickly. That resolved itself quite quickly. So you have an incentive to keep doing what you're doing, because that was probably within, a month or two that, you kind of sorted my alignment out quite quickly. But then continuing to go through the process is when I started to feel other benefits in other parts of my body. Then I was kind of like, oh, okay, this is worth doing. And I don't know if you remember, but like at one stage I roped in a couple of my girls who were also coming down to the gym and we were doing sessions together, and they kind of dropped off. But for me, it was like, I could feel what this was about. And I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And both of them got heavier for not coming back. So I'm going to say that. Sorry, girls.
So
is what it is.
You stuck with the program. Consistency is key. You realize consistency is the key, because like you are at that level now where you know everything about exercising and eating.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do now, but that's what I mean. It's like there's been a lot of seasons. Do you know what I mean? I think we've probably been working out now for probably 9 years, and I think in that time there has been a lot of seasons. I've gone through a lot. Like I've gone through a lot of physical changes, positive and negative. And I've consistently worked out during that time. But the nature of the workouts I've done and the nature of what I've had to do at times has had to change depending on what I was going through and what was happening with me. So, from that point of view, it's, for me, I would say it's more of a way of life now. It's how I live my life. And not moving is more of an issue for me than moving, regardless. So, it doesn't matter what that looks like. I have to move, and my body understands that after a couple of days, it has to do something.
I talk about sometimes flow state and force state. And just listening to you where you're like, it's part of what I do. I can also see that you're in flow state, that it's part of like second nature.
It is now, but I mean, you'll remember there's been times where there's been huge resistance. And lots of resistance in different ways. Like I remember the first reluctance for doing weights, for example, was I don't want to be hench, which is what girls say all the time. And I really didn't. And actually, I learned to appreciate something that I used to dislike about my body, because I have really good muscle memory. And I get it off my mum. My mum's muscle memory is fantastic, and so is mine. But that used to scare me, because that used to make me think, like, the second I pick up a weight, it was like you just see muscles forming. But I tell you what's a cure for having a muscular back and thinking that you don't like it: have a fat one and realise that you don't like that more. So that was initially a resistance, but it's a lack of understanding. I didn't understand what quote unquote makes somebody hench. So the reality is that I'm never going to be that, and it doesn't matter what I lift and how much I lift. I mean, I'd have to basically be a bodybuilder in order to get the kind of body that I didn't want. And I'm not doing that. Do you know what I mean? It takes huge amounts of commitments to be a bodybuilder. That's a whole different way of life. Whereas what I've found is that there is a benefit to having energy. There is a benefit to feeling strong, in the sense of, I always used to say if I fell off a cliff, I'd want to be able to hold myself long enough for someone to rescue me. I'm confident I can do that now. When I met you, I couldn't hold myself off a step, never mind a cliff.
You couldn't let her hold the bar at times.
Yeah, but then there have been times, like, for example, the food thing for me was a big thing. And I remember when you were in a space of like, start tracking your food, and I was like, no. And I resisted that for a long time. But then, there was a point where you start to recognise, hang on a second, I can work out, because that's the thing that's been interesting. I've consistently worked out with you over the years, but my weight has fluctuated. And so what it made me understand is that working out's one thing. It's good to keep your body and your heart healthy, blah, blah, blah. But food was a whole different situation. I'm probably like many people where food is more my weakness. I can train all day long and I don't mind, but then you put cake in front of me and I forget who I am and want to dive into it. And so there was a point where I had to learn about food, and I had to learn about my body's response to food in order to really meet my goals. And there were times when I'd get really frustrated because I'd feel like I'm doing all the right things. Why is this weight piling on? And then, you'd come along and say something weird like, why don't you increase your calories by 100, but actually focus on it being more protein led? And I'll be like, huh? And then I'd try it, and 4 weeks later, I've lost 5 pounds, and I couldn't do that before. So I had to learn, and through the resistance, I had to at times trust you and trust the process and go through the process, see the benefit, and then let that be the incentive to keep doing it more. So I've turned into this woman now who walks around, particularly because of the age I am now, and I walk around and I say to women, you know, if you're over 35, if you're over 40, you need protein. Protein's the most important thing. That's what controls your hormones and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm a bit of a researcher, so you tell me something and then I'll try it, and then I think, okay, this is working, and then I start thinking, but why is it working? So I do my homework in that sense, and I think when I've added to that and layered onto it, then I get it. Plus, you know, like I say, at times I've learned a lot from you. So, you know, yeah, now I'm in a space where when you tell me to do an exercise or when you tell me to do a particular movement, I usually know what it is you're really asking for.
Yeah.
Whereas before I'd have been like, yeah, okay, and not thought anything of it. Now I know, oh, okay, he's trying to work this muscle group, or he's trying to get to that, da-da-da. But that's just come over a period of time. I'd say the benefit I've probably gained, and sometimes it doesn't feel like a benefit, I'll say that much, but the benefit I've gained is that I know my body really well.
Yeah.
I know my body and my mind really, really well. And I'm very in tune with my body, and I'm very in tune with just what my body's doing at any given time. And I didn't have that self-awareness before we started training, and I didn't even know that I needed it. But it matters, because if environmental changes are happening in my body, I'm very aware of them very quickly.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very important to really know oneself and body.
It's crucial. I mean, I think as we get older, it's actually really important, because there's health variables that are changing all the time. And if you're not aware of what's happening in your body, you can't address it. And I think 9 times out of 10, what happens is we wait for symptoms of things to get so bad before we go to the doctor, or before we even recognise that it's happening. Whereas from my point of view, I'm not going to say that I'm not a doctor in that sense, but it's a little bit like if you've driven a car for a really long time and then something feels off in that car, you feel it quite quickly. And I feel like that's how I am with my body now. It's like if just something feels a bit off or something feels different, generally I'm onto that quite quickly, and then it makes me want to tackle it quickly. So I'm hoping that what that means is I just save myself from a lot of unnecessary difficulties, because I'm kind of getting to it faster.
Yeah, prevention's better than cure, isn't it? We always got to remember that.
Yeah.
So in saying that, there's a lot of people out there that, you know, want to get started, want to get into training, but sometimes they're a bit skeptical. They don't know who to work with and stuff. So let me ask you a question. What was it about me that you wanted to move forward and like?
Do you know what? One of the things, and this is something that I'm consistent with in my life. So anybody who I work with closely, so whether it's you as my PT, whether it's the woman who does my hair or whatever, it's always about people who care about what they're doing. I always feel like you can just tell the difference. You can tell when somebody cares and when they don't. And I think from your point of view, something that I recognised really quickly with you is that you cared about what was best for me. You cared about what was going to make a difference. You cared enough to challenge me when I was resisting. You cared enough to push back. So I would say that was something that I saw really quickly. And one thing I will say, and I feel like this can be a thing from a woman's point of view, it can be really easy to be skeptical about a man training you, because you know, what men's objectives are in the gym, in my opinion, isn't often the same as us. And one of the things that I've seen you do over the years is really kind of, for lack of better wording, learn how to, yes, train a woman, but also train the individual. So over the years, we've talked numerous times about, well, what are my goals at this present moment? And there have been times when I'm like, okay, I want to be stronger. And then there's times when I'm like, I need to be more flexible. And then there's times where I'm like, I need to increase my agility or whatever. But to be fair, every time we've had those conversations, you then will go away, come back and completely cater to that. And I think that sometimes what can be difficult in working with anybody in any area is if you feel like they're trying to meet their own objective over yours. Honestly speaking, you have met, it's so funny because I've trained for so long and I understand so much about training. I've gotten to a point where loads of people ask me to train them. And yeah, but the thing is, my answer in most circumstances is no. And the reason is because I watch you and I'm like, to be a good trainer, you have to give so much of yourself. It sounds really bad to say, but I ain't giving that. I ain't gonna. No, because and it's hard. Like if you go in, I've done this. Like I've trained with other people who are maybe not at the level that I'm at, and firstly they're intimidated by what I'm doing, and I have to explain to them that listen, I'm down the road. Like I've been doing what you're doing. I'm further down the road. I have to do this to push my body, whereas for you, you can do less and push your body that way. So you have to have that conversation. But then when you're trying to do like your box jumps, do you know what I'm saying? And then you got to stop what you're doing to show man how to hold a dumbbell. Like, I don't have the headspace for that. So I take my hat off to you because I feel like it requires a lot of you to do that. And also what I will say is personal training, I think people just think it's about, come in the gym, lift a few weights or do a few exercises and go home. It's like, I feel like at times you've literally been my therapist. You've been my friend. There've been days when I've gone into the gym and, I'm angry and I'm frustrated. And you found ways to work with that. Like instead of kind of going, listen, get out of your head, you need to do this workout. You've given me a baseball bat and gone, right, as long as you use the right technique to work your obliques, you can beat the hell out of that. And I'm kind of like, okay, I can work with this. But I feel like you cater to the individual. And that's, for me, the reason I'd say why 9 years we still work together. There could be a genuine argument that I don't need it anymore because I do know what I need to do and I know what I'm doing. But it's not always about that. It's about being in an environment where you feel safe, where you can say, this is what I need to do. And to an extent, I can put that in your hands and trust that you'll help me get there. As long as I do my part, you're doing your part. So it makes it feel like it's a team effort to do what I'm doing and I'm not just in the gym doing it by myself.
Yeah. Bless. And thank you for sharing that.
No, to be fair, he's cool like that. He actually cares about what he's doing. Do you know what I mean? I'm not that, it sounds awful to say, but I feel like it takes a certain type of person and I'm not that type of person. The things that I care about doing, don't get me wrong, I do and I do well. And I'm not saying that I don't care about people in general, but when it comes down to the whole working on the mind, the body, and that's a lot. And you've got to be willing to take on, it's a lot. Well done.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you. Tell you the truth, I did catch myself yesterday. It was about 12 o'clock. And I've been after this person and I saw him drive past me in the opposite direction. And I thought, Mike, I was about to do a Starsky and Hutch and turn around and go, right. I finally caught you, but I thought, I'm going to get her another day.
Start chasing someone down the road. But that's what I mean. Like, you care enough to do that. And the thing is, there's so many people who, frankly, me being one of them, in that sort of setting, I don't have the capacity for it and I can put my hands up to that. So for the people who are like, please train me, I love you, but no. But he'll train you and he'll do a really good job.
Oh, bless. Thank you. Listen, so the biggest question is now, what does life look like now that you've solved all your problems and your frustrations?
Do you know what? Like I say, I've gotten used to, I would say, a good quality of life in the sense of, as a rule, I'm used to having good energy levels. Being active. I'm pretty strong. I don't get sick or injured very often. Happens occasionally, but not too often. I understand how to work with food and how to manipulate food to suit my body. And I feel like at this point I've probably developed a lot of good habits. Because there's certain things I do very habitually that people think.
What's one of the habits that you're very proud of to say that you've changed?
Like, I remember struggling to get protein into my diet, adequate amounts of protein. I remember when you used to say, like, how many grams of protein you needed, and I'd be like, where's that going to come from? And then when I started tracking food in particular, you start realizing that it's really difficult to get, like, good protein. So I had to develop strategies around it. And so now a lot of my good habits are formulated around that. So, I can work it out so that probably by the end of breakfast, I've had a good 25 to 30 grams worth of protein because I've strategized it into my diet. Whereas you can't just do that if you're just eating chicken breast or you're just eating eggs. Well, not as a woman anyway, because the amount of consumption you would need would be too much calorie-wise. So I'm proud of things like that, where I've gotten good at strategizing things like that into my daily habits. And to be fair, it's interesting actually, because I remember years and years ago, an ex-partner of mine was really like keen on eating very natural foods. He wasn't used to processed food.
Yeah.
And so, and I remember he always used to be like natural, and I hated it because it felt long. Whereas now my habit is to eat natural foods more so than processed foods. I don't really like processed food and my body doesn't like it.
Yeah. Mine's the same too. As soon as I have processed food, I'm like, bam, where'd that stomach come from?
Literally. And that's the thing. And that's the other thing I will say. Like, you create an environment for your body to operate in. And I feel like when you're out of that environment, it can be really difficult to be in alignment with yourself. And again, I'm always very clear about when I'm out of that environment. So that's a big thing. And then the other thing is, I never understood the huge and significant impact that exercise of whatever nature has on mindset.
Okay.
That's a big thing. And where the gym started to become sort of something that influenced my life and still does, is it's the one place that I'm very clear that I've achieved things that I didn't think I could.
Yeah. So name a few, please. Like, because I know, I could tell you some, but I know some. I want you to do it. Where you were like, do this. No, I can't do
that.
Yeah.
I can't do that. What are you telling me to do that for? I've been very resistant, people. I can admit it. I've given him a run for his money at times. I suppose the amount that I can lift or have been able to lift is probably one of them. So like I say, I remember when we first did like leg press, 40 kg, mashed me up. And I remember being very clear about that, how much that was. And I remember you saying to me at that time, you should be able to lift 3 times your body weight. And I was like, you're having a laugh in here. I was like, hang on a second, that's like 160 kg or something. Are you crazy? That's not going to happen. But I've lifted more than that now.
Yeah.
I think I've gone up to 180 on leg press.
Yeah.
So it's those sorts of things. Then there's more athletic things. So whether it's like jumping, oh my God, jumping was something that I hated and could not do.
Yeah, I've got a nice picture of you jumping on the box.
Yeah, whereas now I can box jump pretty well, do you know what I mean? And actually quite enjoy it. Yeah. But I remember saying to you once, like, listen, when you're 6, jumping is the easiest thing in the world. When you're 36, jumping is like someone punching you in the chest, like it's horrible. But, you know, it's kind of natural now. It's a sort of, and the thing is, if I go to the gym myself, you know, I kind of like doing those sorts of exercises. I like doing plyo. I like doing kind of things that are a mixture of movement and strength. And if I build my own workout, I tend to gravitate towards those types of workouts anyway. But they're definitely things that at the time I was like, oh, absolutely not. And another one I think that was a bit of a shocker for me was sprinting.
Okay.
Because I actually really enjoyed sprint training. Like, I've gotten to the stage now where I look forward to summer, because I'm a little bit like, I actually enjoy sprint training. But I remember the first time we had that conversation, I was like, where does this man think I'm running? He's going to have to send a dog after me, because that's the only way we're going to pick up speed around here. And then next minute, I'm sprinting up and down the road that I live on, going, I ain't got to say, this is all right. I quite enjoy it. So there's loads of things like that. And that's, I think probably that's been the nice thing, and the thing that I did not appreciate about training before it started. You don't think about the ebbs and flows. You don't think about the fact that it can change and it can be different. You just think, oh, I've got to lift a few weights and that's it. But like I say, our journey through training has changed so much over the years, depending on what's going on. And, you know, sometimes we circle back and sometimes we go somewhere completely different. And that for me has within itself being an education. So when you put yourself in a space where you suddenly think, you know what, I can do stuff that I didn't ever think I could possibly do. And then you start looking at challenges in life. You start thinking, well, why can't I overcome that or do that in my life? Because guess what? In the gym, I was able to lift 3 times what I thought was even possible. Why can't I move that business venture there? Or, get that job over there or create that opportunity or whatever.
Yeah. So it's transferable. Some of the skills in the gym, you just apply it to normal day-to-day life.
Massively. And to the point where if I get stuck in life, I find that I go back to the gym as like the point to recalibrate and go, hang on a minute, this is the space where I can go, hang on, no, I can get into a mindset and I can overcome this. Right, now time to take that back into life. So I do that probably more than I actually realise, but I do it.
Yeah. So on another note, did you hear there was something going around social media about only how many pull-ups a woman can do?
Yeah, I think it was something crazy, wasn't it? It was like it was some ridiculous percentage of women, only 4% of women or something. No, 1% of women can do pull-ups.
So what was your indicator on that, since that you can do pull-ups?
Well, right. I was like, that ain't true. I was like, surely that's not true. I can do pull-ups. I know women who can do pull-ups. Surely that was my first reaction to that. I was just a bit like, I don't know if that's true. But I suppose it comes down to environment.
Yeah.
I'm in an environment where I see that sort of thing happen all the time, and it changes what your norms are. So maybe for somebody that's not normal, but for me, that's kind of.
Was you in a kind of way, like kind of chuffed that, I'm in one of those percentages that can actually do pull-ups?
Yeah, I mean, I disagreed with the percentage being so low, but then I was kind of like, but clearly I'm in the minority, okay. So we're doing all right.
But vice versa.
Yeah.
When you were learning to do pull-ups, okay,
hated it.
Okay.
Hated it.
You hated it.
Yeah, because do you know what? But again, this is the thing, isn't it? Because it's like it's so easy to tell yourself a story. So like obviously from a female standpoint, you tend to think my strength centers are, core, legs, that sort of thing, upper body, not so strong, So when you get someone, who makes you hang off a bar and then goes, okay, now pull yourself up, you're like, what? Mm-hmm. What do you mean? That's not something I can do.
Yeah.
And then over time, as you start to achieve it, you're kind of like, oh, okay. And then you see the benefits of it.
Yeah.
The important thing, ladies, though, is we don't tell men that we can lift things up that are really heavy, so they still carry on bags. He hates me for that, but it's the truth. I'm like, don't tell anyone that I can do that. Because if he refuses to carry my shopping bags now because you told him that I can lift it up, I'm going to be upset. But the truth is I can really. I just do that when there's no men around.
Yeah. But there is making people have the power where they can do anything. And another thing is skipping. That's another thing. You never used to like skipping. You
really
can skip.
didn't. No, I really didn't like skipping, truth be told. And I've got to be honest with you, I'm not a massive fan of it now, but it's fundamental. Like there are times when I know that it's necessary. And I did go through a phase, particularly when I was trying to achieve a weight goal for when I turned 40. I was determined to fit into this dress for my birthday. And I did it. But I remember getting up every morning at like 6 a.m. and the first thing I would do before I got ready for work was like skip for 20 minutes. Oh, it drove me mad. And intermittent skipping and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But that's what I mean. It's like sometimes you can push yourself to do something when you recognize the benefit of what you're doing. So I suppose I'm in a space where I don't have to like it. Yeah. And I will say that now, like you'll make me laugh sometimes because you'll be like, oh, didn't you love that workout? Didn't you love that, the feeling? Didn't you love that pump? And I'm like, no, I love fitting in my dress on Saturdays.
But how do you feel like when you do put your clothes on and then you look at yourself in the mirror? How do you feel about yourself?
And I'm like, it's a good job you went to that workout, love, and you listened to what he said. Do you know what I mean? It's a good job you put down that bit of cake so you could fit into it. Yeah, no, you feel good about yourself and you feel accomplished. And do you know what? More than anything else, like and other people said this to me. It's not something I even recognised initially myself. I think particularly when like 2021, I kind of really achieved my ultimate. Really achieved my body goals after struggling with it for a couple of years because that had been going on since about 2019 and I'd started to make progress and then I had a knockback and then I remember like early 2021 kind of deciding nah, enough is enough. And again the first few months I struggled. I don't know if you remember, like I was struggling with it because I was working out and I was doing all the exercise but the weight was really kind of messing with me. Again, that's what happens when you're over 40. But I think when I actually got to the point where I really achieved it, I remember, and not even remember, it's other people that started to say to me, gosh, like the level of confidence is just shot through the roof. Like, you know, the way you walk into a room now is, you know, just, it was decent. It was good before, but now, like, it's, you know, it's over the top. Probably a few people who hated me for it. Sorry, I was just reveling in my moment. I worked hard.
Yeah, okay. You did.
I did.
You deserved it anyway.
Yeah, I worked hard. I wanted to take the moment. So those little black dresses and crop tops were coming out the cupboard. You know what I mean? They've been sitting there way too long, not being appreciated. But but it's like what you don't realize. And it was part of the reason when in 2019, I remember thinking, I really need to do something about this. And then doubling down at the beginning of 2021, it was because I started to hide. And I remember getting to the point where I started thinking things like, I need to wear the wrap dress because it hides my stomach. And I need, like, I was, you know this, I was obsessed with sleeves. I never wanted to wear anything sleeveless because I was always really conscious of my arms. And like, just little things like that. And what starts off as like an initial thing where just for this Saturday night event I'm going to, and obviously I host events and I do things like that as well. So it's like there's times when I'm on a stage, I'm in front of people. And, you know, when you've wedged yourself into this dress to the point where you can barely breathe, let alone speak, you're not comfortable in your own skin. And even when you don't realize that it's showing to the world, it's showing to the world, you know, people see it. So I just remember getting to the point of going, this is not me. I don't want to hide. I don't want to put so much energy into trying to conceal all of these things. I just want to be able to focus on the job at hand, go out there and do what I'm supposed to do. And that means that I'm not worried about hiding the stomach or hiding the arms or this, that, and the other. So there was a point when that definitive action was just about allowing myself to be me unapologetically and not have to hide behind stuff. And I suppose then it worked in the sense that when I ultimately got to that point, it felt good.
Yeah. And I can see, and you looked amazing, and you still do. So, you know,
past tense. Wait a sec.
But listen, one thing is, you can't take it away from everything that you've done. But the biggest question I want to ask you, and I ask all the guests that turn up here. If you could go back in time and look at your future self, what would you tell your future self?
When?
Sorry, let me say that again. I feel like I said it wrong. If you go back in time and talk to the younger you, okay, what would you tell them about
for the future?
For the future.
I'd say it depends on what age I was going back to. I think if I went back to athletic Marisha at school.
What do you think the younger you would need to hear?
Well, that's what I mean. I think if I went back to like the athletic Marisha at school that was hugely body conscious but actually really fit, and interestingly I was very disciplined then, and disciplined in the sense of, I remember like going through a phase of telling myself different things I needed to do to achieve what I wanted to. I mean, it didn't actually work, but I gave it a good go. And I say that to say that I remember at one point even cutting out butter and stuff like that. Like I just, you know, I was very disciplined. So what I would say to my younger self at that point is I would simply say, trust the process, because I don't think I did. And for that reason would change course very quickly. It would be like, I'm going to try this, or it's not worked. I'm going to try that, it's not worked. So I would do that a lot and probably put myself through a lot more than I needed to. But it is about trusting the process and recognizing that there's always something in life to learn. So don't be afraid to listen in order to learn. You know, as I say, I've learned a lot from you over the years, and a lot of time when I got past the point of just being purely resistant to why are you making me do that, then I started to get into the space of why are you making me do that? It was a different tone on the same question, but the different tone was understanding versus resisting. And so hence why now when you make me do something, particularly if it's something I'm not keen on doing, you'll usually see me smile and go, well, I know why you're making me do that. Okay, let's bash out these 3 sets and get them done. So, yeah, I'd say that. I'd say trust the process and listen.
Yeah. Maisha, listen, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
You're welcome. It's nice to talk about it. I don't talk about it very often.
And you know, it's interesting because I know we discuss it, but I never knew in that type of way of how much changes and effects has actually happened.
Oh, I'm a different person, and let me tell you something. I'm going to be 50 and fine.
I know.
I'm going to be 60 and sexy. Like, it's never going to stop. Do you know what I mean? It's never going to stop. I'm always going to be younger than the young things. That's how I put it. Younger than the young things.
And I'll be honest with you, you're a client I've always loved training. From when you stopped, you know what I mean?
Kicking off.
And then it became to, Maisha, I want you to do this. Okay. I'll give it a go. I was like, wow. Before you'd be like, why am I doing this? No!
And I can't. Yeah, I don't really say I can't anymore. I tend to go, okay, I'll try.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Listen, thank you for coming to the show.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
It's been nice.
Hope you all guys enjoyed that. And listen, if you've got any questions or you're watching this at the end, you want to leave your comments. We always do check the comments. Even you want to say something to Marisha or even to me. Okay? Is there anything you want to say to everybody before we go?
Do you know what I would say? Because I hear people say this all the time, and they're kind of like, I don't know, I don't know if I can work out in the gym. I don't know if I like it. Particularly to women. There's a few things I'd say actually. Number one, you're never going to be hench. Just get it out of your head. It's not going to happen. It's not a thing. Unless you're going to be a bodybuilder, in which case, and as a woman bodybuilder, it would be hard for you to stay hench for long anyway. You're never going to be hench. Stop using it as an excuse. Number two, the reality is there is youth in strength. I will say that. It slows down the aging process. And bearing in mind that generally us ladies are aging better than the men anyway. Let's keep it that way. Go make yourself fit. And thirdly, I would say it's not always about dieting, but understand food. Get to understand food. Get to understand macros. Get to understand the benefit of protein, particularly if you are premenopausal, even if you're at the age where you're having children still and so on. Just get to understand the benefit that protein has on a female body and look for ways to put more protein into your body. I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to cut out other things. That's your decision to take. But if you can find ways to up the percentage of protein that you eat, you will feel the effects of it. You will find yourself more energetic. You will find that getting leaner is easier. And you will find that when you are over 40 and you're premenopausal, it will help you to manage your hormonal changes a lot better. Because that's one thing. Hormones are our nemesis. And if you can figure out ways to give your body the environment that it needs in order to thrive the way that you want to, it will really help. Those have been the biggest game changers for me in the time that I've been training. So you'll always find that somewhere along the line, I'm yamming a protein bar because I recognize the benefit of it. I'd say that.
Oh, brilliant. So there it is. You see that she's body sharp, mind and body. Thank you for listening, people.
Visit us for updates and shows at affinityextra.co.uk.